You don't have a discipline problem. You don't have a motivation problem, and you're definitely not lazy. So let me ask you something. Why do you keep doing the exact things you said you would stop? Why do you know what to do and still don't do it? That's the part no one can explain, because it doesn't make sense. Unless you understand this, you're not failing because you don't know what to do. You're failing because part of you doesn't want to change. And that's where everything begins. It's 2:17 in the morning. Your room is quiet. Your screen is still glowing. Your goals are right in front of you. Clear, simple, possible. And yet, you don't move. Not because you're tired, not because you're confused, but because something inside you is pulling you back. You open another tab. You check your phone. You tell yourself, just a minute. But deep down, you know what's happening. You're avoiding, not the work, but the version of yourself that the work would force you to become. And that realization changes everything. Because the real problem isn't that you don't want a better life. You do. The real problem is this. There are two versions of you living in the same mind. One of them wants growth, clarity, discipline, control. It sees your potential. It knows exactly who you could become. But the other one wants comfort. It wants what's familiar, what's easy, what's safe. It doesn't care about your goals. It only cares about keeping you the same. And every single day, these two versions of you are fighting. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. In your decisions, in your habits, in the moments no one sees. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because you're divided. I didn't understand this for a long time. I thought I needed more discipline, more motivation, more willpower. So I tried harder. And the more I tried, the more I failed. Until one moment changed everything. I was sitting at my desk, staring at a list of things I said I wanted to do. And for the first time, I noticed something uncomfortable. I wasn't confused. I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't even tired. I was resisting the work and the person I would have to become if I actually followed through. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't stuck. I was split. Split between who I was and who I wanted to be. And that split was controlling my life. There's a name for this. But honestly, you don't need the term, because you felt it. Every time you said, I'll start tomorrow. Every time you broke your own promise. Every time you chose comfort over growth, even when you knew better. That tension you feel, that's not weakness, that's conflict. And conflict demands resolution. So your mind does one of two things. It either pulls you forward or drags you back into who you used to be. Most people get pulled back, not because they're weak, but because they never learn how to end the war. That's what this is about. Not motivation, not hype, but understanding the hidden war inside your mind and learning how to finally end it. Because the moment your identity and your actions align, everything changes. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You stop starting and stopping. You move. With clarity, with direction, with control. And for the first time in your life, you're no longer fighting yourself. You're finally on your own side. So if you've ever felt like you're capable of more, but somehow keep holding yourself back, this isn't random. This isn't bad luck, and this is not who you are. This is a pattern. And today, you're going to see it clearly, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you stop being two people, you finally become one. Chapter 1. The Hidden Split, Controlling Your Life. The alarm goes off. 6 a.m. For a brief second, everything is clear. You remember who you said you were going to become. You remember the plan. You remember the promise. And then, you hit snooze. That moment seems small, almost insignificant, But that moment, that's where your life starts to go in a direction you didn't intend. Because in that exact second, it's not just you making a decision. It's two versions of you. One of them says, "Get up, this matters. This is who we're becoming." The other one whispers, "Not today. Just a little longer." And almost every time, you listen to the second one. Not because you're weak, not because you don't care, but because part of you is still loyal to the person you used to be. That's the hidden split controlling your life. Most people never see it. They think they're stuck. They think they lack discipline. They think they need more motivation. But the truth is much deeper than that. You're not stuck. You're divided. There's a version of you built from your past, your habits, your comfort zones, your repeated choices. This version is familiar, predictable, safe. It knows how to survive your current life. And then there's another version of you, the one you imagine late at night, the one who is focused, disciplined, consistent, the one who follows through, builds something meaningful, becomes someone you respect, the one you say you want to become. And here's the part that changes everything. Those two versions of you are not working together. They are competing. Every decision you make is a vote, not just for what you do, but for who you are. That's why this feels so frustrating. Because on the surface, it looks like a discipline problem, but underneath, it's an identity conflict. I didn't understand this for a long time. I thought I just needed to try harder, more discipline, more structure, more control. So I pushed myself. I created strict schedules, downloaded productivity apps, set goals that looked perfect on paper. And for a few days, it worked. I felt focused, in control, different, like I had finally become that version of myself. But then something always happened. I slipped once, then again, and slowly I went back. Same habits, same patterns, same frustration. And that's the part that makes no sense. Because you know what to do. You're not confused. You're not lacking information. So why can't you follow through? Because you're trying to act like someone you don't yet believe you are, and your mind resists that. Not loudly, not in a way you can clearly see, but quietly. You hesitate. You delay. You tell yourself later. You negotiate. And it feels like laziness. But it's not. It's misalignment. Because when your actions don't match your identity, your brain creates resistance. Not to stop you from growing, but to keep you consistent. Because consistency feels safe, even when it's keeping you stuck. This is how people lose years of their life. Not in one big failure, but in small moments like this. Moments where they choose the familiar version of themselves over the one they want to become. I remember one moment very clearly. I was sitting at my desk. The room was quiet. My laptop was open. The task in front of me was simple. Something I could have finished in less than an hour. And yet, I sat there for almost 3, switching tabs, checking my phone, thinking about starting, but never starting. And at some point, I stopped, and I asked myself a question that felt uncomfortable. If this were truly who I am, would this feel hard? And the answer was immediate. No. A focused person wouldn't struggle like this. A disciplined person wouldn't hesitate like this. Which meant something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't acting like someone who was becoming that person. I was acting like someone still attached to my old identity, and in that moment, everything became clear. I wasn't stuck. I was split. Split between who I was and who I wanted to be. And that split was controlling everything. That's when I understood something that changed everything. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your identity. And if your identity hasn't changed, your results won't either, no matter how motivated you feel. no matter how detailed your plans are, no matter how badly you want it. Because wanting something is not the same as believing it's who you are. And until those two align, you will keep feeling this tension, this hesitation, this invisible resistance. So the real question is not, what should I do? You already know that. The real question is, who am I being when I make this decision? Because every moment gives you a choice. Reinforce the old version of yourself, or step into the new one. And the shift doesn't happen in one big move. It happens in small moments. The moment you get up when it's easier to stay in bed. The moment you start when you don't feel ready. The moment you follow through when no one is watching. Those moments matter more than anything, because they are not just actions, they are proof. Proof to your mind that you are becoming someone different. So here's where you start. Not with a massive change, not with extreme discipline, but with awareness. The next time you hesitate, pause, just for a few seconds, and ask yourself, who am I acting like right now? Is this my old self or my future self? And what would the person I want to become do next? That small pause changes everything, because inside that pause, you are no longer reacting. You are choosing. And that's where change begins. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're not lacking anything. You're just divided. And the moment you choose one version of yourself, the other begins to disappear. Chapter 2. Your brain is designed to keep you the same. You wake up the next day. This time, you don't hit snooze. You sit up. You breathe. You tell yourself, today is different. And for a moment, it feels real. You feel in control, focused, clear. But then, slowly, something shifts. You reach for your phone, just to check something quickly. 5 minutes turn into 20. You tell yourself you'll start after this, then after something else, and before you realize it, you're back in the same pattern. Not fully off track, but not moving forward either. And that's the confusing part, because it doesn't feel like you made a decision to fail. It just happened. Quietly, subtly, almost automatically. And that's when most people start blaming themselves. I need more discipline. I need to try harder. I just need to be more consistent. But what if the problem isn't your effort? What if the problem is your brain? Because your brain is not designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you the same. That's its primary job. To protect you, to conserve energy, to avoid uncertainty, and most importantly, to keep your identity stable. Even if that identity is limiting you, this is why change feels so unnatural. Because when you try to become someone new, your brain interprets that as a threat. Not a physical threat, but a psychological one. Because becoming someone new means stepping into the unknown, and the unknown is unpredictable. So your brain does what it's supposed to do. It pulls you back, not by force, but by influence. It creates resistance. You start to feel tired, distracted, unmotivated. Not because you actually are, but because your brain is trying to redirect you back to what's familiar. This is where most people misunderstand themselves. They think, I don't want this badly enough. But that's not true. You do want it. The problem is, another part of you wants something else more. It wants comfort. It wants certainty. It wants the version of your life that it already understands, even if that version is smaller than what you're capable of. This is what creates the internal conflict. You want to grow, but your brain wants to stay safe, and safety almost always wins. Because safety feels good in the short term, even when it costs you in the long term. I remember realizing this in a way that completely changed how I saw myself. It wasn't during some big failure. It was during something small. I had planned to work on a project I cared about. Nothing overwhelming. Just a few hours of focused work. and I started. For about 10 minutes. Then I felt the urge to check something, just quickly, and I did. Then something else, then something else, and suddenly I was completely out of the flow, not because I couldn't do the work, but because something in me didn't want to stay in it. And instead of judging myself, I paused, and I asked, what is my brain trying to protect right now? And the answer surprised me. It wasn't trying to stop me. It was trying to protect me from discomfort, from effort, from uncertainty, from the pressure of becoming someone new. Because staying the same is predictable, and predictability feels safe. That's when I understood something that most people never realize. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of transformation, because transformation requires letting go of the person you've been, and that's uncomfortable, even if that person is holding you back. So your brain creates a compromise. It lets you think about change, plan change, even get excited about change, but when it's time to actually become different, it pulls you back, gently, quietly, consistently. This is why people stay stuck for years, not because they don't want more, but because their brain is wired to protect what already exists. So the real question becomes, how do you change when your brain is designed to resist change? The answer is not force, because force creates more resistance. The harder you push, the more your brain pushes back. That's why motivation fades. That's why discipline feels exhausting. That's why you keep starting and stopping, because you're fighting your own system. And you can't win a fight against something that's built into you. So instead of fighting your brain, you have to understand it and work with it, not against it. Start by recognizing this. Your brain is not your enemy. It's just doing its job. But that means you need to give it a new job. Instead of letting it default to comfort, you train it to accept growth as normal, not through big dramatic changes, but through small repeated actions. Because your brain learns through evidence, not intention. Every time you act in alignment with the person you want to become, you send a signal. This is who I am now. And over time, your brain starts to believe it, not because you told it to, but because you proved it. This is where everything starts to shift. Because once your brain begins to see your new behavior as normal, it stops resisting it. It stops pulling you back and starts supporting you instead. But that only happens if you stop trying to force massive change all at once and start focusing on something much simpler: consistency. Not intensity. Not perfection. Consistency. One action, repeated, daily, until it no longer feels like effort, until it becomes part of who you are. Because the goal is not to win against your brain. The goal is to retrain it, to slowly show it that growth is safe, that change is not a threat, that becoming someone new is actually just becoming who you were meant to be. So the next time you feel resistance, don't panic, don't judge yourself, and don't assume something is wrong with you. Pause and ask yourself, is this resistance, or is this my brain trying to protect me? Because once you see it that way, everything changes. You stop fighting yourself, you stop forcing things, and you start moving differently, with awareness, with intention, with control. Because now you understand something most people never do. Your brain isn't stopping you. It's just trying to keep you the same. And the moment you stop letting it decide that is the moment you start changing your life. Chapter 3. The identity loop that quietly controls everything. At some point, you start to notice a pattern, not in a dramatic way, but in small, repeated moments. You say you're going to change, and for a short time you do. You feel focused, you feel motivated, you feel like something has finally shifted. And then, you slowly drift back. Not all at once, just a little, then a little more. Until one day, you realize you're back to being the same person again. Same habits, same mindset, same results, and it feels confusing. Because it's not like you didn't try, you did. So why does it keep happening? Why does progress feel temporary? Why does change feel like something you can touch for a moment, but never hold on to? The answer is hidden in something most people never pay attention to. The loop. Not your habits, not your motivation, your identity loop. Because everything you do in life follows a pattern, a cycle that repeats itself over and over again. You believe something about yourself. That belief shapes your actions. Those actions create results, and those results reinforce your belief. Then the cycle repeats, again and again and again. This is what controls your life, not your goals, not your plans, not even your effort, your identity. Because whatever you believe about yourself, you will find a way to prove it, even if it's limiting you, even if it's holding you back, even if it's not who you want to be anymore. I used to tell myself something without even realizing how powerful it was. I'm not consistent. It sounded harmless, just an observation, something based on past experience. But that belief shaped everything, because every time I faced something difficult, that belief would show up, quietly, subtly, and it would influence my decisions. When things got hard, I'd hesitate. When I slipped once, I'd stop completely. When I lost momentum, I wouldn't rebuild it, and every time that happened, it confirmed the belief. See? This is who you are. And the loop continued, not because it was true, but because I kept proving it. That's how powerful identity is. It doesn't just describe you, it controls you, because your brain is always trying to stay consistent with who you think you are. If you believe you're disciplined, you'll act like it. If you believe you're unfocused, you'll act like that too. And the most dangerous part is this. You don't question it, you accept it. Because it feels familiar, it feels real, but it's not fixed, it's built. And anything that is built can be rebuilt. That's where everything starts to change. Not when you try harder, but when you start becoming aware of the loop. Because once you see it, you can interrupt it. And the way you interrupt it is simple, but not easy. You stop reinforcing the old identity, and you start creating evidence for a new one. Not through big dramatic changes, but through small, intentional actions. Because identity is not changed by what you say, it's changed by what you repeatedly do. This is where most people go wrong. They try to change their life first and hope their identity follows. But it doesn't work like that. Your identity leads, your actions follow. So if you don't change the identity, your actions will always return to what feels familiar. That's why people can have moments of discipline, but never become disciplined. Because they are still operating from the old loop, old belief, old behavior, old result, over and over again. Breaking that loop requires something different. It requires you to act before you fully believe. It requires you to step into a version of yourself that doesn't feel completely natural yet. And that's uncomfortable, because your brain will question it. It will resist it. It will try to pull you back. But this time, you understand why, and that changes how you respond. I remember the first time I consciously broke my own loop. It wasn't anything big. It was something small, almost insignificant. I had told myself for years that I wasn't consistent. So one day, I made a simple decision. I'm going to follow through, just this one time. No pressure, no big expectations, just one action. And I did it, and something shifted. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Because for the first time, I had evidence that contradicted my identity. And that's how change begins. Not with a new belief, but with new proof. Because your brain doesn't change based on what you hope is true. It changes based on what you experience repeatedly. So the goal is not to convince yourself you're different. The goal is to show yourself you are. One action at a time. That's how you start rewriting the loop. You choose actions that align with who you want to become. Even when it feels unnatural, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when your brain resists, because every time you do, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. Slowly, quietly, but powerfully. And over time, something incredible happens. The actions that once felt difficult start to feel normal. The resistance fades, the hesitation disappears, and the version of you that once felt distant becomes who you are. Not because you forced it, but because you built it. So if you want to change your life, don't focus on your goals. Don't focus on motivation. Focus on the loop. Pay attention to what you believe about yourself. Watch how it shapes your actions. And most importantly, start creating proof that it's no longer true. Because the moment you interrupt the loop, you take back control. And from that point on, you're no longer repeating your past. You're creating something new. Chapter 4. The moment you see it, everything changes. There's a moment in this process that changes everything. It doesn't look dramatic. There's no big breakthrough, no sudden surge of motivation, no external sign that anything has changed. But internally, something shifts. You start to notice yourself. Not just what you do, but when you do it. You catch the moment before you open another tab. You notice the second you reach for your phone. You feel the hesitation right before you avoid something important. And for the first time, you're not inside the pattern. You're watching it. That's the moment most people never reach, because most people are so used to reacting. They don't realize they have a choice. They don't see the pattern. They are the pattern. But the moment you see it, you create distance, and that distance is power. I remember exactly when that shift happened for me. It was a normal day. Nothing special. I was sitting in front of my laptop about to start something I had been putting off. And right before I clicked away, I paused. Not because I was trying to be disciplined, but because I suddenly became aware of what I was about to do. And in that pause, I saw it clearly. The old version of me, trying to take control again. Not aggressively, not obviously, but through a small decision that looked harmless. And in that moment, I had a choice. Follow the pattern, or break it. For the first time, I didn't move immediately. I just sat there, watching the urge, feeling the discomfort. And something strange happened. The urge didn't disappear, but it weakened because I wasn't automatically obeying it anymore. That's when I understood something most people never realize. You are not your impulses. You are the one observing them. And that changes everything. Because if you can observe something, you can choose whether to act on it. But if you're not aware of it, you will follow it automatically. That's why awareness is the turning point. Not discipline, not motivation. Awareness. Because you can't change what you don't see. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is what I call the gap, the space between impulse and action. Before, that space didn't exist. Something triggered you, and you reacted instantly. But now, there's a pause. Even if it's just a few seconds. And inside that pause, you have control. Not full control, not perfect control, but enough. Enough to choose differently. Enough to interrupt the pattern. Enough to begin changing. That's where everything starts. Not when you feel ready, but when you become aware. Because awareness doesn't remove the struggle. It reveals it. You will still feel the urge to delay. You will still feel the pull toward comfort. You will still feel resistance. But now, you understand it. And understanding changes your relationship with it. Before, you thought, "This is who I am." Now you realize, this is a pattern I've been repeating. And patterns can be broken, not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually, through awareness, through choice, through small interruptions. This is how you take your power back. Not by eliminating the old version of yourself overnight, but by seeing it clearly enough that it no longer controls you without your permission. Because the truth is, the old version of you doesn't disappear. It doesn't just vanish. It stays. It waits. It looks for opportunities to take over again. But now, you see it, and that changes the game. Because every time it shows up, you recognize it, and recognition weakens it. You stop identifying with it. You stop believing it automatically. You stop following it without question. And slowly, its control fades. This is the beginning of real change. Not external change, internal change. The kind that actually lasts. Because it's not based on forcing yourself to act differently. It's based on seeing yourself differently. So here's what you do. You don't try to control everything. You don't try to be perfect. You simply pay attention. The next time you feel resistance, pause. Don't react immediately. Don't judge yourself. Just notice. Notice what you're about to do. Notice what you're feeling. Notice the pattern and ask yourself, what am I about to choose? Not what you should do, what you are about to do. Because that question brings awareness, and awareness creates space, and space creates choice, and choice is where your life begins to change. You don't need to win every moment. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start seeing. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it. You're standing outside of it, and from there, everything becomes possible. Chapter 5. Alignment. Where change finally becomes real. Once you start seeing the pattern, something interesting happens. You don't react as automatically anymore. You pause more, you notice more. You become aware of the moments where you used to lose control. And for a while, that feels like progress. Because it is. But then another problem appears. You see the pattern, but you still don't always break it. You know what you should do, but you don't always do it. And that creates a different kind of frustration, a deeper one. Because now, you can't say you didn't know. You can't say you were unaware. You saw it, you felt it, and you still chose the old version of yourself. That's the moment where most people get discouraged. They think, what's wrong with me? Why do I still do this even when I know better? But nothing is wrong with you. You're just not aligned yet. Because awareness is not the end of the process. It's the beginning. Seeing the problem doesn't solve it. Alignment does. And alignment is something most people misunderstand. They think alignment means feeling ready, feeling motivated, feeling confident. But that's not alignment. That's emotion. And emotion is unreliable. Real alignment has nothing to do with how you feel. It has everything to do with what you consistently choose. Because alignment means this: your actions match the person you say you want to become. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, even when you don't feel like it, that's where the shift happens. Not in big dramatic moments, but in small repeated decisions that go against your old patterns. I remember when I started to understand this. At first, I thought awareness would fix everything. I thought once I saw the pattern, I would naturally change. But I didn't. I still hesitated, still delayed, still chose comfort more often than I wanted to admit. And that's when I realized something important. Seeing the pattern gives you a choice, but it doesn't make the choice for you. You still have to decide, and that decision is where alignment is built. Not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly. Because alignment is not a single moment, it's a direction, a consistent movement toward the version of yourself you've defined. And the way you build it is simple, but not easy. You stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" And you start asking, "What would the person I want to become do right now?" That question changes everything, because it shifts your focus from emotion to identity. And identity is what creates consistency, not motivation, not pressure. Identity. So instead of trying to fix your behavior directly, you start aligning it with something clear, something defined, something intentional. This is where most people get stuck. They say they want to change, but they never clearly define who they're becoming. So their actions have no direction, no standard, no reference point. And without that, it's easy to fall back into what feels familiar. So the first step to alignment is clarity, not vague ideas like, "I want to be better," or "Duo, I want to be more disciplined," but something specific, real, defined. Who are you becoming? Not in theory, in reality. How does that person think? How do they act? What do they tolerate? What do they no longer accept? Once that becomes clear, everything else becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. Because now, every decision has a reference point. You don't have to guess. You don't have to rely on how you feel. You just ask, "What would that version of me do?" And then you act accordingly, even if it feels uncomfortable, especially if it feels uncomfortable. Because discomfort is often a sign that you're moving away from your old identity and into a new one. This is where alignment starts to build momentum. At first, it feels forced, unnatural, like you're pretending. But that's part of the process, because you are stepping into something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar always feels uncomfortable at the beginning. But if you stay consistent, something shifts. The actions that once felt difficult start to feel normal. The resistance starts to fade. The hesitation becomes weaker, and slowly, the gap between who you are and who you want to be begins to close. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it, one decision at a time. That's how real change happens. Not in a single breakthrough, but in consistent alignment. So here's what you focus on. Not perfection, not intensity. Alignment. One decision, right now, in this moment. Ask yourself, what would the person I want to become do next? And then do that. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Because alignment is built in the present, not in your plans, not in your intentions, but in your actions. And the more you repeat that process, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't have to force it. You don't have to question it. Because it's no longer something you're trying to do. It's who you are. And that's when the conflict begins to disappear. Not because you eliminated it completely, but because one version of you has become stronger than the other. And eventually, it takes over. That's the power of alignment. It turns awareness into transformation. Chapter 6. Stop fighting yourself. Reprogram the system. At this point, you understand something most people never do. You see the pattern, you understand the conflict, you've started making more aligned decisions. And yet, there are still moments where you fall back. Moments where you hesitate. Moments where you choose comfort. Moments where the old version of you takes over again. And when that happens, it's easy to think, I need to be stronger. I need more discipline. I just have to push harder. But that's where most people go wrong, because trying to force change is exactly what keeps you stuck. Not because effort is bad, but because you're applying it in the wrong direction. You're trying to fight yourself, and you can't win a fight against something that's built into you, because the version of you that resists change is not your enemy. It's your system, your habits, your environment, your default patterns, all working together to keep you consistent. And consistency, again, feels safe. So if you want to create real change, you don't fight the system. You redesign it, because willpower is unreliable. It fades, it fluctuates. It depends on your energy, your mood, your environment. But systems operate whether you feel like it or not. That's the difference. I learned this the hard way. For a long time, I believed I just needed to be more disciplined. So I relied on motivation. When I felt good, I worked. When I didn't, I stopped. And that created a cycle. Short bursts of progress, followed by long periods of inconsistency. And no matter how much I tried, it kept repeating. Until I stopped asking, how do I push myself harder? And started asking, why is it so easy for me to fall back? That question changed everything, because the answer had nothing to do with my mindset. It had everything to do with my environment. My phone was always next to me. Distractions were always available. My habits were built around comfort, not growth. So every time I tried to change, I was doing it inside a system designed to keep me the same. Of course I struggled. Anyone would. And that's when I understood something powerful. You don't rise with motivation. You fall to your systems. So instead of trying to become stronger, I made the system weaker. I removed distractions. I changed my environment. I made the behaviors I wanted easier and the ones I didn't want harder. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And something interesting happened. The resistance didn't disappear, but it became easier to manage. Because now, I wasn't relying only on willpower. I was supported by my environment, and that changes everything. Because your environment shapes your behavior more than your intentions ever will. If distraction is easy, you will get distracted. If comfort is always available, you will choose comfort. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. So the goal is not to eliminate your human tendencies. It's to design around them, make focus easier, make distraction harder, make the right action the obvious one. That's how you reprogram the system, not by forcing yourself to change internally, but by changing what surrounds you externally. And when you combine that with identity alignment, something powerful happens. Your actions start to feel natural, not because you've become perfect, but because you've removed unnecessary resistance. This is where consistency is built, not through effort alone, but through design. So here's what you do. You stop asking, how do I stay motivated? And you start asking, how do I make this easier to do and harder to avoid? Because that's a better question. A more effective one, and it leads to real change. Start small. Remove one distraction. Just one. Something that constantly pulls you away from what matters. Then add one supportive element, something that makes the behavior you want easier to start. Not perfect, just easier. Because you don't need to redesign your entire life overnight. You just need to shift the balance. Make the right choice slightly easier, and the wrong choice slightly harder. And over time, those small adjustments create big results. Because now, you're not relying on willpower alone. You're working with your system, not against it. And when your system supports your identity, change stops feeling like a struggle. It starts feeling like momentum. That's the shift, from forcing yourself to act differently to creating a life where the right actions happen naturally. Because in the end, you don't become someone new by fighting yourself. You become someone new by removing what keeps you the same. Chapter 7. Becoming someone who no longer self-sabotages. At some point, something starts to feel different. Not in a dramatic way. There's no big moment where everything suddenly clicks. But you notice it in the way you make decisions, in the way you respond to resistance, in the way you move through your day. You hesitate less. You think less about whether you should act, and you just act. Not perfectly, not every time, but more consistently than before. And that's when you realize something important. The conflict is getting quieter. That voice that used to pull you back is still there, but it's weaker, less convincing, easier to ignore, and for the first time, you're not constantly fighting yourself. You're moving with yourself. That's the shift. Not from failure to perfection, but from conflict to alignment. Because self-sabotage doesn't disappear overnight. It fades, gradually, as your identity becomes clearer, stronger, more defined. Because self-sabotage is not random, it's a result of confusion. Confusion about who you are. Confusion about what you actually want. Confusion about which version of yourself is in control. But once that becomes clear, the need to sabotage disappears. Because there's nothing left to fight. You're no longer being pulled in two different directions. You're moving in one. And that changes everything. I remember noticing this shift in a moment that used to be a problem for me. I had a task in front of me. Something I would normally delay, overthink, avoid. And without thinking too much about it, I just started. No negotiation, no internal debate, no need to convince myself. I simply did it. And afterward, I paused because something felt different. Not the action, but the experience. There was no resistance, no internal friction, just clarity. And that's when it hit me. This is what it feels like when you're no longer sabotaging yourself. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because you became someone who doesn't need to. That's the goal. Not to control yourself forever, but to become someone who naturally moves in the right direction. Because control is exhausting, but identity is effortless. When your identity is clear, your behavior follows. You don't need constant reminders. You don't need external pressure. You don't need to rely on motivation. You act because it's who you are. And that's what you've been building this entire time. Not just new habits, not just better discipline, a new identity, one that supports you instead of working against you. But here's the part that matters most. This doesn't happen by accident. It happens through proof. Small, repeated proof. Every time you act in alignment, you reinforce the new version of yourself. Every time you follow through, you strengthen it. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you make it more real. And over time, those small moments add up until one day, you no longer question it. You no longer doubt it. You no longer feel like you're trying because you're not trying anymore. You are. That's the difference. And this is where most people stop too early. They experience some progress, some alignment, some clarity, and they think they've arrived. But identity is not something you set once. It's something you maintain through continued action, through continued awareness, through continued alignment. Because if you stop reinforcing it, the old patterns can return. Not immediately, but gradually, quietly, the same way they always have. So the key is not just becoming someone new. It's staying that person, not through pressure, but through consistency. That's why the process doesn't end here. It evolves. You keep showing up. You keep choosing the version of yourself you've committed to. Even when it's easy. Even when it's hard. Even when no one is watching. because that's what makes it real. Not intensity, not perfection, consistency. And the more you do that, the less space there is for self-sabotage, until eventually it has nowhere left to exist. Because there's no longer a gap between who you are and how you act. That's when you know you've changed. Not when things feel easy, but when they feel natural. When discipline is no longer something you force, but something you live. When progress is no longer something you chase, but something you embody. And when the version of you that once felt distant becomes your default. That's what it means to become someone who no longer self-sabotages. Not perfect, not flawless, but aligned, clear, and in control of your own direction. Because at the end of the day, you don't stop self-sabotaging by trying harder. You stop by becoming someone who no longer needs to. Chapter 8. The war ends when you choose who you are. There comes a point when everything becomes quiet. Not around you, but inside you. The constant hesitation fades. The overthinking slows down. The internal arguments disappear. And for the first time in a long time, you feel clear. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you are no longer divided. That's the shift, the one everything has been leading to. Because the real problem was never your discipline. It was never your motivation. It was never your ability. It was the war, the silent, invisible war between two versions of you. The one who wanted more, and the one who wanted to stay the same. And as long as both of those versions had equal power, you were stuck in the middle, pulled in both directions, moving, but not really moving forward. Trying, but not becoming. But now something has changed, not outside, inside. You've chosen, not once, but repeatedly, in small decisions, in quiet moments, in times when no one was watching. You chose the version of yourself you wanted to become, and every time you made that choice, you weakened the other one, until eventually, it lost its grip. That's how the war ends. Not with one big decision, but with many small ones, stacked over time. And what you're left with is alignment, not perfect alignment, but enough. Enough to move forward without constantly fighting yourself. Enough to act without hesitation. Enough to trust yourself again. Because that's what this process really gives you. Not just discipline, not just consistency. Trust. Trust that when you say you're going to do something, you will. Trust that you won't betray your own intentions. Trust that you are no longer the person who starts and stops. That trust changes everything. Because once you trust yourself, you stop questioning every decision. You stop second-guessing your actions. You stop looking for shortcuts. And you start building something real, something stable. Something that doesn't collapse every time things get hard. I remember the moment I realized this had happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big achievement, no external validation. Just a normal day. I woke up, got up immediately, started working, followed through, and moved on. No hesitation, no resistance, no internal debate. And what stood out wasn't the action. It was how normal it felt. That's when I knew the war was over. Not because I had become perfect, but because I had become consistent. Because I had chosen who I was and stayed loyal to it. That's the final step. Not learning more, not trying harder, choosing clearly, intentionally, and then refusing to negotiate with your old self. Because that's where most people fall back. They choose who they want to become, but they keep listening to who they used to be. They leave the door open. They keep negotiating. Just this once. I'll start tomorrow. It doesn't matter. But it does. Because every time you negotiate with your old self, you give it power again. And the moment it regains power, the conflict returns. So the key is simple. but not easy. You choose once, and then you reinforce that choice every day, through your actions, through your decisions, through your standards. Not perfectly, but consistently. Because consistency is what turns a decision into an identity. And identity is what creates a life. So if there's one thing to take from all of this, it's this. You don't need more discipline. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a better plan. You need to decide who you are and stop being anything else. Because the moment you do that, the confusion disappears, the hesitation fades, and the path forward becomes clear. Not easy, but clear. And clarity is enough. Enough to move. Enough to act. Enough to keep going without turning back. So from this point on, when you face a decision, don't ask yourself what's easier. Don't ask yourself what you feel like doing. Ask yourself, who am I now? And then act accordingly. Because your life is not shaped by what you want. It's shaped by what you repeatedly choose. And now, you understand that. The war was never outside. It was never about your circumstances. It was never about other people. It was always within you. And now, you've ended it. Not by becoming someone else, but by finally becoming one. You were never lazy. You were never undisciplined. And you were never the problem. You were divided, pulled in two directions, between who you were and who you wanted to become. And that division is what made everything feel hard. Every decision, every habit, every attempt to change. It wasn't that you didn't care. It was that part of you did, and part of you didn't. And as long as those two versions of you were fighting, you were always going to feel stuck. But now you see it clearly, not as a theory, not as an idea, but as something real. Something that has been shaping your life quietly this entire time. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's where everything changes. Because awareness creates a choice. And that choice is where your new life begins. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now, in the next decision you make, in the next moment where you feel resistance, in the next time your old self tries to take control. That's your opportunity, not to be perfect, but to choose differently. Because change doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you decide, and then act in alignment with that decision. Again, and again, and again, until it becomes who you are. So don't try to fix everything at once. Don't try to become a completely different person overnight. That's not how this works. Focus on one thing, one decision, the next one. And when that moment comes, pause, just for a second, and ask yourself, who am I choosing to be right now? Not who you used to be, not who you feel like being, who you are becoming, and then act from that place, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. Because that discomfort is the signal that you're changing, that you're stepping out of the old version of yourself and into something new. And if you repeat that process, just one decision at a time, something powerful will happen. The hesitation will fade, the resistance will weaken, the conflict will disappear, and one day, you'll wake up and realize you're no longer fighting yourself. You're moving with clarity, with direction, with control. Not because life got easier, but because you became aligned. And that's the shift that changes everything. So if this resonated with you, don't just listen to it. Use it. Pay attention to your decisions today. Notice the moments where you usually fall back and choose differently. Just once. That's all it takes to start. And if you're ready to go deeper, to truly understand your mind and build a version of yourself that doesn't break under pressure, make sure you stay connected, because this is just the beginning. Your life doesn't change when you want more. It changes when you become someone who chooses more. And now, you know how to do that. You were never lazy. You were never undisciplined. And you were never the problem. You were divided, pulled in two directions, between who you were and who you wanted to become. And that division is what made everything feel hard. Every decision, every habit, every attempt to change. It wasn't that you didn't care. It was that part of you did, and part of you didn't. And as long as those two versions of you were fighting, you were always going to feel stuck. But now you see it clearly, not as a theory, not as an idea, but as something real, something that has been shaping your life quietly this entire time. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's where everything changes. Because awareness creates a choice. And that choice is where your new life begins. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. In the next decision you make. In the next moment where you feel resistance. In the next time your old self tries to take control. That's your opportunity. Not to be perfect, but to choose differently. Because change doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you decide, and then act in alignment with that decision. Again, and again, and again, until it becomes who you are. So don't try to fix everything at once. Don't try to become a completely different person overnight. That's not how this works. Focus on one thing, one decision, the next one. And when that moment comes, pause, just for a second, and ask yourself, who am I choosing to be right now? Not who you used to be, not who you feel like being, who you are becoming. And then act from that place, even if it's uncomfortable. Especially if it's uncomfortable, because that discomfort is the signal that you're changing, that you're stepping out of the old version of yourself and into something new. And if you repeat that process, just one decision at a time, something powerful will happen. The hesitation will fade, the resistance will weaken, the conflict will disappear, and one day you'll wake up and realize you're no longer fighting yourself. You're moving with clarity, with direction, with control. Not because life got easier, but because you became aligned. And that's the shift that changes everything. Kambabu. But there's one more thing you need to understand. This isn't a one-time realization. This is a way of living. There will still be days when you feel off. Days when your old patterns try to come back. Moments where the old voice sounds convincing again. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. The difference now is you don't get lost in it anymore. You recognize it faster. You recover quicker. You return to alignment sooner. And over time, those moments become weaker, less frequent, less powerful, less convincing. Because you've built something stronger. Not motivation, not temporary discipline, but identity. And identity doesn't collapse easily. It holds, it stabilizes you, it keeps you moving, even when things aren't perfect. So when you have a bad day, don't overreact. Don't spiral. Don't tell yourself you're back at the beginning. You're not. You're just experiencing resistance from a version of yourself that's losing control. And instead of fighting it, you simply choose again, calmly, clearly, without drama. That's growth, not perfection. Consistency in returning, consistency in choosing, consistency in being who you said you would become. Because at the end of the day, this is what defines you. Not your intentions, not your plans, not your thoughts, your choices. Repeated over time. That's what creates your life. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to eliminate struggle. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to stop being divided. Choose who you are and stay with it, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one is watching, because that's where your real life is built. In those quiet moments, in those unseen decisions, in those times when you choose growth without needing anyone to see it. And if you can do that, even imperfectly, you will become someone different, not overnight, but inevitably. And one day, you'll look back and realize something that once felt impossible. You didn't just change your habits, you changed who you are, and everything that comes with that changes too. So take a breath, slow down, and step into your next decision with intention. Because your future is not something you hope for, it's something you build, one choice at a time. And starting now, you're building it as one person, not two.